Hello and welcome to the next tutorial in Python. Now in this tutorial we'll learn that Python automatically expects everything to be a string, which in other words is text. So I'm going to show you that, demonstrate it, and then I'm going to show you how to get around that if you want to, for example, create a program that does some addition, multiplication or subtraction. So here first I'm just printing to the screen, enter a number. I'm using the input function to store whatever the user enters into the keyboard into a variable I've created called num1, short for number one. It's always good convention in any programming language to name your variables after the kind of thing you're going to store in it. So if I was going to store a name, for example, I'd probably call the variable name. As it's the first number, I've just shortened it to num1. Next, I just prompt the user by printing to the screen, enter a second number. Again, I use the input function to store that in a variable called num2, just create it. Next, I'm adding the two numbers together that the user has entered, storing it again into a new variable called num3. And finally, I'm printing to the screen some text, your numbers added together. Then I close the speech mark, put a comma, and then the variable name num3, which is holding the result of the addition. Now one important thing to note here is that the variable is not in speech marks, because this isn't text. This is a box in memory that we've stored the results of this addition up here in, and it's been called num3. So this is a variable, and when you print variables to the screen in Python, you don't have it in speech marks. And to join the text here, which is text, a string, you put a comma there just to say to Python, print this text first, then go and get this, get the contents of this box in memory called num3, and then print that to the screen as well. Now if we run this, it might do something that you don't quite expect. So I'm going to put 5, there you go, enter a second number, 5. Now you're probably expecting it to be 10, but it won't be. It gives us 55. Now you might think that makes absolutely no sense, but when you understand Python a little bit more, it makes perfect sense, because what Python is assuming that this input here, when we've stored the input from the user into the variable num1, it's assuming it's text, a string of text. Again here, it's assuming that whatever's input into the keyboard is text. So when we do the addition here, it's actually joining the two numbers together to print 5 and 5, 55, rather than actually do proper addition as we know it. So to get round that, we have to do something called casting. Now as we're printing whole numbers, the data type that's most suitable for a whole number is an integer. If we wanted a decimal point, we could use a float, but we want to use an integer in this case as it's just going to be whole numbers. So to fix the code, I put the keyword int, which is short for integer. I put an extra bracket in here, and then I put an extra bracket here. Now what this is now doing, it's saying go and take the input from the keyboard, whatever they enter in, change it into an integer, and then store it in the variable called num1. Now obviously I have to do the same here, so int, put the bracket in, put the second bracket here. Where you put the brackets is important. This basically surrounds the input function and says, you know, when you're taking it in from the keyboard, change it into an integer. Now if we run this again, you will notice that something different happens. So we enter a number, 5 again, put another one in, 5, and you can now see we're correctly adding the numbers together. So this was just a quick tutorial on data types basically in Python and how to change one data type to another. So the important things to remember is whenever you take an input from the keyboard and you store it, it's going to think it's a string unless you tell Python otherwise. And to cast, to change one data type to another, you can just use this, put the data type in front of the input function and put brackets around it, and that will work perfectly. Just to show you how to do a float, we could just use the keyword float now, not in caps preferably. There, and you'll know you've got it right because it will go purple. And again, that's quite useful in idle. float there. I'll run it again. There'll be a minor difference, which you'll probably see. So I'm going to go 5, enter, 5, enter, and the key difference here, you now notice it goes 10.0, as it will now give a decimal place, and I could, even if I wanted to, you might use this for, say, somebody's height. They could be 6'2". So let's put, I don't know, 6.2 for 6'2", and 6.2 again, and you'll see it'll now work. It will add them together, including the decimal place, which can be very useful sometimes. Well, I hope you enjoyed that quick tutorial on casting and data types. We've discussed 3 different types of data type in the tutorial today: integer for a whole number, float for a decimal point number, and also string, which is just for storing text. Okay, have a go at this and have some fun. Bye for now.